There is something genuinely surreal about waking up and realizing that Baltimore is entering a chapter it has not faced in nearly 2 decades. For so long, the head coach position felt untouchable, almost permanent, part of the daily rhythm of the franchise. When someone occupies that role for 18 seasons, it becomes routine. You stop imagining what the organization would look like without that familiar presence on the sideline. Suddenly, that stability is gone. And even for people who understood change was coming, the reality still hits with unexpected weight. On a personal level, it is impossible to ignore the respect that was built over the years from the first interactions. There was always a sense of professionalism and humanity. The way players and people around the organization were treated mattered. And those experiences do not simply vanish because a tenure ends. Even situations behind the scenes, like giving young players the chance to earn their spot rather than handing them anything, helped shape careers and left lasting gratitude. Those moments are real, and they coexist with the reality that football, especially at this level, is relentlessly results-driven. When you step back and look at it through a purely competitive lens, the decision becomes clearer. This roster is built to win right now. The expectations are not theoretical or long-term, they are immediate. When a season begins with a deep hole and turns into a constant uphill battle, patience wears thin quickly. Ownership made its intentions clear, and the message was simple: the window is open, and it cannot be wasted. At that point, it stops being personal and becomes a matter of direction. This is why the phrase "new era" does not feel like empty talk. It reflects a real shift in philosophy and urgency. The postseason struggles, the repeated collapses at critical moments, and the inability to translate regular season promise into playoff success created a pattern that could no longer be ignored. Even acknowledging that no single person carries all the blame, there comes a moment when the organization decides that a different voice and vision are necessary to break that cycle. What makes this transition even more fascinating is how quickly Baltimore has moved into action. There is no hesitation, no long pause to reflect publicly. The search has already begun. And that alone tells you how serious the situation is. One of the early names drawing attention is Anthony Weaver, a figure deeply familiar with the culture of the franchise. His history with Baltimore, both as a player and as a coach, gives him instant credibility in the building and with the fan base. Weaver represents more than just familiarity. He embodies a style rooted in energy, accountability, and connection with players. Those who have followed his career know that he brings intensity and clarity to his defenses, traits that were ingrained during his time surrounded by legendary figures who define how things were done in Baltimore. That environment leaves a mark, and it shapes how someone leads when given responsibility. His recent experience coordinating a defense elsewhere adds another layer to the discussion. Results have not always been perfect, but context matters. Team dynamics, injuries, and broader organizational inconsistencies play a role. What stands out more consistently is how players respond to him. He is known as someone who communicates well, demands effort, and understands the modern locker room. In a league where connection can be just as important as scheme, that matters. There is also a broader organizational theme at play here, and it revolves around continuity. Baltimore has never been a franchise that cycles through coaches year after year. Stability has always been valued, sometimes even prioritized. The idea is not to chase quick fixes, but to build something sustainable and functional over time. In contrast, other teams have become cautionary tales, stuck in endless loops of hiring and firing without ever establishing an identity. That history makes the decision even more delicate. This hire is not just about next season. It is about setting a direction that could last another decade or more. The front office, the roster, and the coaching staff all need to align under a shared vision. Questions naturally rise about how responsibilities will be divided, how much autonomy a new coach will have, and how existing leadership within the organization fits into that structure. Weaver, at the very least, checks the box of understanding what Baltimore football is supposed to feel like. From an interview standpoint, he represents a logical starting point. Someone who can speak the language of the franchise while also offering a fresh perspective. Whether that translates into him being the final choice is still unknown. But his presence in the conversation signals that the Ravens are serious about blending tradition with evolution. At the same time, the debate around offensive versus defensive leadership continues to simmer. In today's league, where explosive offenses dominate headlines, many believe the future lies with a head coach who can directly shape the attack. That idea becomes even more compelling when you consider the quarterback at the center of this team. Maximizing that talent is not optional, it is the priority. This is why names from offensive backgrounds are also drawing interest. Bringing in a young, creative mind carries both excitement and risk. The upside is obvious: modern concepts, aggressive play calling, and a system designed to stress defenses in multiple ways. The downside is leadership. Being a brilliant strategist does not automatically make someone a commanding presence, capable of managing an entire roster, a full coaching staff, and the countless decisions that define a game on Sundays. That balance is what makes this moment so pivotal. Baltimore is not rebuilding. It is reloading with urgency. Every choice from here forward will be judged through the lens of championship expectations. The next head coach will not inherit a blank slate. He will inherit pressure, talent, and a fan base that knows this team is capable of more than it has shown when it matters most. As the search unfolds, the emotions around this transition will continue to evolve. Respect for the past remains, but the focus is unmistakably shifting toward what comes next. The Ravens are standing at a crossroads, not between relevance and irrelevance, but between familiarity and transformation. And the path they choose will shape the identity of this franchise for years to come. What complicates this entire process is the reality that changing the head coach is never an isolated move. When that position turns over, the ripple effect is massive. Entire staffs are reshaped, systems are reinstalled, terminology changes, and players are asked to adapt all over again. That is why this decision feels heavier than most. It is not simply about finding a leader for the sidelines, but about choosing the philosophical direction of the team at every level. If the Ravens lean toward a defensive-minded head coach, the expectation is clear. That coach must be someone who can set a physical tone, demand discipline, and restore that edge that has historically defined Baltimore football. Defense has always been part of the franchise identity, and many believe that identity should never be abandoned. In that scenario, the offensive side becomes equally critical, because the coordinator hired must be capable of elevating the quarterback and keeping pace with the modern league. On the other hand, the idea of hiring an offensive-minded head coach carries its own logic. The league continues to tilt toward creativity, spacing, tempo, and explosive plays. Baltimore has seen flashes of that potential, but not consistently enough. When the stakes are highest, an offensive head coach could bring a unified vision to that side of the ball. One that blends the run game with play action and vertical threats in a way that fully unlocks what this roster can do. The challenge with that approach is leadership presence. Coordinating an offense and commanding an entire locker room are very different responsibilities. The head coach must manage personalities, make critical in-game decisions, oversee all three phases, and represent the organization publicly. Those skills are not guaranteed, even for the most brilliant tacticians. That is the gamble, and it is one the Ravens cannot afford to miss on. This is why experience, temperament, and communication style matter just as much as scheme. Whoever steps into this role will need immediate credibility. The players know this team is close. They know opportunities have slipped away. The message they hear from a new head coach must resonate instantly, not after a long adjustment period. Trust has to be built quickly because the margin for error is razor thin. Another layer to this conversation is how the rest of the coaching staff would come together. A new head coach means new coordinators, new position coaches, and new voices in meeting rooms across the facility. Continuity disappears overnight unless it is deliberately preserved. That raises questions about whether any parts of the previous structure remain, or if the reset is total. Each option carries consequences for development and performance. There is also the broader context of the division itself. The AFC North does not allow for gradual transitions. Every opponent is physical, aggressive, and unapologetic about making games uncomfortable. Whoever leads Baltimore next must understand that reality deeply. There is no easing into divisional matchups. Those games test preparation, toughness, and adaptability more than any others on the schedule. From an organizational standpoint, the urgency cannot be overstated. This roster is not built for patience. Veteran leaders are in their prime. Contracts, cap considerations, and physical wear all point toward a narrow window that must be attacked decisively. Ownership knows this. The front office knows this. The fan base feels it every time a season ends short of expectations. That urgency makes the interview process fascinating. Every question asked behind closed doors is likely centered on accountability, adaptability, and vision. How does this coach respond when things go wrong? How does he adjust when opponents expose weaknesses? How does he keep a team focused after setbacks instead of letting doubt creep in? These are not theoretical discussions. They are essential to surviving January football. What cannot be ignored is the emotional element attached to this change. 18 seasons create deep connections, habits, and assumptions. Moving on requires confronting the fear of instability. It also requires confidence that the organization can evolve without losing its core values. That balance between honoring the past and refusing to be limited by it defines successful franchises. As names continue to circulate and interviews progress, speculation will only intensify. Every potential candidate will be measured against the same question: can this person take a team that is already good and make it great when it matters most? Not better on paper, not more exciting in September, better when seasons are decided. This is the standard now. Baltimore is not searching for direction. It already has one. It is searching for the right voice to carry that direction forward and push it beyond the barriers that have repeatedly stopped it short. Whoever steps into this role will inherit expectation, pressure, and opportunity in equal measure, and the decisions made in the coming weeks will echo far beyond the next kickoff. There is also an undeniable spotlight on how the next head coach will handle in-game management, an area that has been magnified by recent disappointments. Late game decisions, clock control, fourth down calls, and adjustments after halftime are no longer secondary talking points. They are central to the evaluation. In a conference loaded with elite quarterbacks and aggressive play callers, hesitation can be fatal, and Baltimore knows it has to be sharper in those moments. Another critical aspect is player development, especially with younger talent that is expected to step into bigger roles quickly. This roster is not just top-heavy with stars, but filled with players who are either entering their prime or approaching it. The next coach must accelerate growth rather than stall it, creating an environment where competition is real and progress is constant. That development has to translate directly onto the field, not just show up in practice reports. Communication inside the building will matter just as much as anything drawn on a whiteboard. The relationship between the head coach and the front office has to be aligned, transparent, and efficient. Decisions on personnel, game planning, and long-term strategy must feel unified. Any disconnect there risks undermining the urgency this moment demands. And Baltimore cannot afford internal friction at a time like this. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support keeps us bringing you the latest news on the Baltimore Ravens. And hey, drop your take in the comments below. We want to hear from the flock. Whispers around the league grew louder after a turbulent night in the AFC North, one that seemed to tilt momentum in opposite directions. While the Steelers left the field surrounded by questions and frustration, the Ravens walked away with the kind of quiet confidence that often precedes bold moves. And then came the rumor that has set front offices, fans, and analysts buzzing. Higgins could be heading to Baltimore. It sounds almost too dramatic to be true, yet the pieces appear to fit. The Ravens' recent performance reinforced a familiar narrative: a physical, disciplined team that still craves one more elite weapon on the outside. Higgins, long admired for his size, route running, and ability to dominate contested catches, would represent exactly that. League insiders suggest that Baltimore's front office has been monitoring the situation closely, aware that opportunities like this rarely come without chaos elsewhere. For the Steelers, the move could not be more different. Another disappointing outing has intensified scrutiny on their roster construction and offensive identity. The idea that a division rival might land a receiver of Higgins' caliber only deepens the unease in Pittsburgh. Around the league, some believe this contrast, one team searching for answers, the other sensing an opening, is what fuels the speculation. If the move were to materialize, the impact could be immediate. Higgins paired with Baltimore's existing playmakers would force defenses into uncomfortable choices, opening space and redefining how opponents prepare. Coaches love to talk about stress points in a defense, and Higgins is the type of player who creates them snap after snap. His arrival could signal not just a tactical upgrade, but a philosophical shift toward a more explosive, unpredictable attack. For now, it remains a rumor, the kind that thrives in the space between silence and confirmation. Yet in a division where margins are thin and timing is everything, even speculation can feel like a warning shot if the Ravens truly are positioning themselves to land Higgins. The balance of power in the AFC North may already be starting to shift. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay in the loop with exclusive news on our Baltimore Ravens, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. We'd love to hear what the flock thinks. Drop your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next one.